Today is the second session of the CPP tutorial, and today I'll be covering 3 topics here. First is I will talk about what is physical protection system, PPS in short. Next, I will cover some key security concepts, and thirdly, I'll talk about these facilities physical security measures, a guideline by ASIS. First, let me give you a quick introduction about the company, Security 4.0 Private Limited. This is a company that provides training and consultancy in enterprise security. And it is a ASIS International Preferred CPE provider. CPE means continuing professional education. So for any certification holder from ASIS International, like holding a CPP, PSP, PCI, or APP, any of these certification holder, by attending any of the program run by Security 4.0, they can earn CPE credits to help them towards the recertifications. So of course, our certificate that issued by us will also bear the logo of ASIS International. So the first session of the CPP tutorial that I have conducted was held about 2 weeks ago. It was also a virtual class, just like exactly like this. So what I covered in the first sessions, as you can see on the screen here, there are also 3 topics. I gave an overview of the 7 CPP domain knowledge. So CPP, of course, it stands for Certified Protection Professional. It is one of the most recognized security management certifications program. So in order to take the exam, you have to study the 7 domain knowledge. So I gave an overview of the 7 domain knowledge. And I also talk about the security industry standards. The security industry standards is one of the important knowledge that you need to learn from the security principles and practices. So which is one of the domains there. Then I also share about 6 tips on passing the CPP exam in 90 days. Now, if you have missed the first sessions, you can actually go back to the Security 4.0 e-learning channel. It's a YouTube channel, which is now available. You can access it by you can go to my LinkedIn. Okay? I have actually posted it there. You can click the link from there and can watch the 15 minutes tutorial there. Okay? So especially for the CPP, the 7 CPP domain knowledge, I gave the overview. You can have a better understanding. And today I will not be giving you the overview. In fact, today I'll be deep diving into 2 of the domains. So out of the 7 domains, today I'll be covering topics mainly from security principles and practices. Now the percentage here, 21%, refers to the percentage of the questions that will be tested during the exam. So there are total of 200 questions. So if you are attempting the CPP exam, expect to have a minimum of 200 questions. So out of these 200 questions, 21%, which equates to 42 questions, will be tested on the security principles and practices. Then physical security, that will be 25%, which means there will be 50 questions. So adding up together this 46%, just these top 2 topics alone, 46%, you will get up to 92 questions. So you can see just on these 2 domains alone, it is almost half of all the exam questions, and show the importance by focusing on just these 2 areas. So today I'm going to just talk about these 2 topics, these 2 domains. And if you are preparing for your CPP exam, you need to get these materials, the protections of assets. As you can see here, there are these 2 books here. One is the POA, in short, protection of assets, we call it POA. So there are a few books. So these are the 2 books. One is the security management. The other one is the physical security. So you can find most of the materials of the domains knowledge on physical security inside this physical security book. And the security principles and practices, you can find it inside the security management book. Okay, so it's scattered around. And of course, there are some other books You can check out on the website, or you can refer back to the earlier tutorial one and learn more about it. So let's start with the first topic here, physical protection system. Now, in the world of physical security, we use this term called PPS, physical protection systems. This refers to the system that is used to protect the physical assets, or even some of the other assets that we have, but using a physical means. And there are three main components that make up this PPS. This is as is seen here on the diagram here, mainly people, procedures, and technologies. And you can see these three circles are actually overlapping one another. What it really means here is the integration of these three areas to protect the assets, the organization of assets against threats, any threats that the organization face. This is PPS. So people will include like your security people, your security personnel, like the managers, the security officers. And of course, it could also include the communities, the employees to come in to help to protect. So we are talking about things like security awareness, where the employees will look out for suspicious behavior, tailgating. So we need to rope in the community. So that is referring to the people, even other stakeholders. Procedures will refer to things like your policies, your security policies, your organization policies, and procedures will be your SOP, the standard operating procedures, and some call it the post orders. So you need to have this to help you to manage the operations. Of course, technologies. Our technologies will include things like your access control system, your CCTV systems. Now, when all these three components, you split them and stand alone, it is not as effective. Right? You just think of it, the chopsticks. When you break one chopstick, it's easy to break. When you hold a bunch of chopsticks together, you'll find it very difficult to break it. So that's the same analogy. So the idea of a PPS is to integrate all these three components together, okay, and it become what we call a system approach towards solving a problem. Our problem, of course, is in terms of the vulnerabilities, the security risks to the organizations. So this is, in short, an overview of PPS. So let's take a further look at what are some of the functions of a PPS. Now, PPS primarily has got three main functions here. As you can see here, it is to detect, okay, for detections of intrusions, unauthorized entry. Second is to delay. After you detect, of course, you want to delay. And following that will be the response. So these are the three primary functions. Then there's also a secondary functions of the PPS, which is the deterrence, to deter criminals, terrorists from targeting your assets. Right? So these are the four functions of a PPS. Let's take a look at the deterrence. Now, deterrence, as I shared earlier on, is a secondary functions. So what is deterrence here? Deterrence is perceived as difficult to defeat. So a person, a criminal, adversary, when he look at a target, wow, this is difficult. Okay, so that is his perception. Okay, a person's perception, and everyone's perception could be different. So depending on his ability, on his resources, he may think differently on whether this is an easy target or it is a hard target. And deterrence can be in two forms: physical versus psychological. So very often we'll see walls, fencing. These are the common physical deterrents, right? So when you go to a place, sometimes when you want to visit a property, a facility, right? When we visit the place, you will notice that the place is fenced up. There's walls, there's fencing, right? You find you cannot just walk across. You have to make yourself to the main entrance. So these are all physical deterrents. It prevents you from just jaywalking inside. You have to go to the main gate or the side gate where there is an access control point where you'll be subjected to checks. Okay, so those are the physical deterrents. So what is psychological deterrence? Psychological deterrence are one of the very good example is like the security guards security officers. By deploying a security officers at a place, right? Whether the guard is capable or not, right? How capable he is you can only test it until you approach the security officers, right? But if you have not approached it, you're standing outside, you are watching the security officers, you know there is someone there. There's a deterrence there. There's someone who will approach you, who will respond to you if you are going to do something wrong. So that psychological thinking that someone will respond to you will deter the criminal from approaching the assets. So it can be in physical and psychological. Of course, again, many people will say psychological is very difficult to assess. Whether is the psychological deterrence effective or not. How do you know the person standing outside was actually planning to intrude into the premise? You never know, right? He won't say, yeah, I wanted to come in to steal something, but after I see the security guard, I decided not to come in, right? So the idea of a deterrence is to make the target unattractive. So can you imagine company A and company B that is seated side by side? So if company A put in a lot of measures, right? Deterrence measure, example, putting in fencing, putting up walls, putting in security officers, putting in CCTV cameras, with all the security measures there. So if a criminal were to select between company A and another company B, which does not have walls, fencing, and guards, which one do you think they would choose? Obviously, they will choose the easy target, the soft target in this sense. Okay? So soft targets will refer to the company B because there is lesser deterrence effect. So that is the idea of unattractive, make the target unattractive. So some other examples of deterrence here include like lighting, signage. Very often you will see signages, especially like the cameras of say this premise is monitored by CCTV cameras. Sometimes people may not see cameras because cameras could be small, they could be inconspicuous, they could be installed at a place where it's located inside the building there, looking out. So an intruder may not see the cameras. So it is important to put out signage outside, even before, or rather at the boundary there, to tell intruders that this place is monitored. There are CCTV cameras. And the signage can be easily mounted on the fencing or walls, and it can be very conspicuous. It can be very bright, colorful, like a red color, which can draw attentions. That will serve as a very good deterrence. But as I mentioned early on, deterrence is difficult to measure the effectiveness, right? And in that sense, it is not so reliable. So let's say if by putting a fencing or you putting a guard, is the guard really effective as a deterrence effect? Not sure. So in that context, it is considered as a secondary function. Now, SEPTED, I'm sure many of you have heard about SEPTED, right? So what is SEPTED? SEPTED means crime prevention through environmental design. I'm sure you all heard a lot about SEPTED. So SEPTED covers a lot of things, and it can be used as a form of deterrence. Later on, I will have a few slides to talk about SEPTED there. So now I have a questions for you. Okay, so how many of you agree that deterrence is a secondary functions? Okay, let's type in the chat group. Just have a few. I would like to see. Okay, so I just saw George. George is from California. I think it's late for you over in California, right? So, okay, so for the rest of you who have actually commented, thank you for taking part. Yes, please do take part, participate. Then it will be a more fruitful learning sessions. Some of you disagree, Ancient disagree. Eric say is a primary function. Good point. The deterrence should come before detections. Yes, good point. And agree. Oh, someone agree. Wow. So again, in the POA, right? So according to the POA, if you read the POA physical security, it says deterrence is a secondary functions as per I explained here. But of course, we can argue it. Okay? So like for my point of view is, if you put in a fencing, a wall around a premise, anybody cannot just jaywalk across it. So people will start to go to the main gate. So every day when we see people walking to the main gate to go for the security check, security screening, this in fact is already the outcome of this deterrence. You prevent the people from just jaywalking inside into the building. That has already achieved its purpose. But of course, from the angle of like the psychological deterrence, whether people will climb over, a person who wants to climb, originally he wanted to go inside to steal something, but because of the security guards there, because of CCTV, then he changed his mind, then he decided to go to company B. We won't know about that. So that is something which is the text is talking about. Right? So this is quite arguable, I would say. But with that in mind, this will help you to better understand when you prepare, let's say when you prepare for the exam and you tackle questions, with this understanding, I would think you will help you to be able to tackle different questions. As we should always look at deterrence as the first step. When we look at all these DDD, we are now also looking at all these deterrence, detection, delay. Yes, so deterrence will be the first. Okay, thank you for participating in these discussions. Now, so from the deterrence, we move on to the next level. Assuming deterrence is not working, people still want to climb in. So there comes the detections, which is the next step. Now, what is detection? Detection is talking about discovery of the adversary, the advancement of this adversary. So he could be climbing over the fence or the wall, or he can be stepping into a boundary. The moment he steps into your boundary, your area, your security zone, your protected zone, your system should be able to pick it up, right? It should be able to detect the people. So upon the detections, it must be followed up by assessment. Any detections will be useless unless you follow up by assessment. So one of the common problems, of course, in many organizations is all the, the false alarms after the detections already, right? All the alarms appearing, right? The command center officers just ignore it because there were just simply too many false alarms. So that makes the detections ineffective, useless. Okay? So assessment is important for establishing whether this is a real alarm or a false alarm, so that further actions can be taken. So if it is a real alarm, you see an intruder coming in, then of course later on there's another step called the response. Then response will need to come in. The command center will need to dispatch the response officer. Okay? So if it's a false alarm, of course, yeah, then that's good. You can acknowledge the alarm, but there could be further actions to be taken. So for example, why is there a false alarm? You have to understand why is there a false alarm. Why is there such a frequent false alarm? Should you then record it? Should you also then record it down as a statistic so that the technician, the tech team can then come in to look at it? So for example, the fence intrusion detection systems. So like every day there are a few false alarms. So it's not good. So probably some adjustment needs to be made to the fence intrusion detection system. So like lower down the sensitivity. But then again, sometimes all this sensitivity can be subject to the environment changes. So let's say there are some constructions nearby the property in the 1 year period, right? So there are a lot of heavy vehicles traveling there. So there could be a lot of vibrations. Then the adjustment to the sensitivity need to be changed. But after the completion of the constructions nearby, then you will notice that there are lesser trucks traveling down the road there, and suddenly you realize that the place become much quiet. There are lesser vibrations. So there's a time then again you have to review to see whether the adjustment needs to be made to the FIDS. So assessment is very important, okay, in terms of both the real and false alarm. Okay? So the idea is to establish the who, what, where, and how. So continue on detections. is measured, how do we measure the effectiveness? So we look at the probability of detections. Okay, so there could be intruders coming in trying to, let's say, climb the fence. Out of 10 times, can you detect all the 10 times, or you can only detect 8 times? Okay, so the probability of the detections. Because if the probability of detection is very low, then there will be a problem with these detections measures. You have to probably enhance it, or you have to put additional layers. Okay, you may have to put 2 means of detections or 3 means of detections. Right. Next is the time for reporting and assessment. Now, once a detections is triggered already, it is very time critical to quickly take actions to report. Okay, to report to the management, to report, to do escalations to the relevant stakeholders, and quickly to make the assessment. Because what it means here is, once the detection happens, potentially the intruder has already started advancing into the property, right? So time is of essence. So any seconds or minutes that the officers delay, that will then means giving more time to the intruder to get to the assets and to leave the place with the clue, right? So moving on, let's look at also entry control. When we talk about detections, let's look at entry control. Entry control means like all our access control points. So access control points, very typically we talk about like a cut access, or we talk about facial recognitions. Right? So think of a typical commercial building. So for the staff or a person to enter the commercial building, they probably may have got a turnstile at the lobby or the level 1, right? So the person needs to be verified that he is a authorized person. So he may be issued a card. So he tap a card, beep, the turnstile open if he's authorized. If he's not authorized or the card has expired, then he's not allowed to enter. Now, the effectiveness of this system is then measured by the throughput. Okay, so how fast can he process all these requests? Okay, and of course, importantly is it every single case of request of entry that we validate is 100% correct? What it means is, here we talk about false rejections and false acceptance. So this person supposed to be, say, allowed to be to enter into the premise, but you falsely reject his entry. Okay. On the other hand, this person not supposed to enter. He's not a legitimate or authorized person, but you falsely allow him to go in. Now, typically for this type of false rejections and false acceptance, we have seen in recent years happens more for like biometrics. Okay. When we talk about biometrics access control, especially like we have been using a lot of facial recognitions in the last few years, we'll see this percentage will fluctuate more for facial recognition system. There could be a certain percentage of false acceptance or certain percentage of false rejections. And some of these manufacturers will in fact state the threshold, the percentage inside their specifications. So in terms of card access, we will of course see lesser of this because it's in a way more reliable. Okay? So we can measure the effectiveness through these few areas. Now, from deterrence to detections, so once we detect really, what must we do now? We talk about delay. So delay is really talking about, now you really detected somebody is coming in, right? Intruder adversary is coming in. The idea now is to slow them down. Okay, so how do we slow them down? We may have a security officer on site. Let's say you have a property, you have got a commercial building, or you got a, let's say, maybe a better example would be a factory. Now, a factory has got this fence line, somebody climb over, right? So it trigger an alarm. So the security officers who is based on site will have to immediately respond. So let's say he is from the guard house or he's from the command center, right? He has to quickly respond to the point of the intrusion. Okay. Of course, there could be barriers that can serve as a deterrence, additional deterrent. Let's say he passed by the first fencing, right? He moved in towards the building. Now, the building itself is also considered as a building perimeter. It's protected by the wall, right? The structure of the building, right? And if the person intruder want to enter the building, he probably has to look for one of the door, one of the access control point. He has to break in. Okay? He has to break the door, or he can break the window to enter it. So there are various other barriers there he has to break through. So the measurement of effectiveness is based on the time to bypass each delay element. So again, let's go back to the fencing, the first layer, the outer layer. Now think of the fence. Let's just think of one aspect of a fence. One of the aspects of the fence is the height of the fence. How high can the fence be? Let's say a typical, say 1.6 to 1.8 meter high fence. Is this considered a high security fence? Maybe not. Okay, in fact, it's not. It is more considered as a low security fence because 1.6 to 1.8 for many people, they are really around their height, 1.6 to 1.8 meter, right? It's about the height of the person. So in that sense, it is not that difficult for someone to try to climb over the fence, right? So how long do you think it takes to climb over the fence? If there's no top guard, let's say there's no barbed wire or anything there, it probably will just take a few seconds to jump over it, right? Maybe let's say 10 seconds, just climb over it. So now let's raise the fence to say 2.4 meters. It's higher than a normal human. So obviously you may need some jumping, some running in order to get leverage to reach the top of the fence before you rip it and you climb over it, right? So in that sense, maybe from 10 seconds, you will now take 30 seconds. Now, how about now we say we increase to 5 meters? Wow, that's 5 meters, that is very high. That is just like our overhead bridge. That is very high. So that would mean it is going to be very difficult for anyone to just climb over the fence without any aid, right? You probably will need some ladders or some vehicles, or you may just really need to climb all the way up the fence. You are going to take longer. Okay, so from that aspect, the delay will be longer. So by putting in the different specifications to your delay measures, to your delay element, you can have different results. So at the outer parameter, if you decide that you want to make it difficult, say, okay, you want to have somewhere in between, let's say a 3.5 meter high fence, probably you will estimate, let's say you assume it take about a minute to penetrate. But what is important here between the relationship of the detection and delay is the delay starts, we start counting the timing the moment the detections happens. So the moment, let's say he start grabbing the fence, right? Okay, he start pulling up the fence, he start climbing up, he trigger an alarm. Now, that is the point where the delay time should be counted. Okay, so hopefully he will take 1 minute, right, to move up. Of course, let's say if you ask me, hey, Dex, what if my detection not so good? He climbed halfway already, right? Then it was detected. So he get an advantage, right? Originally, the delay was supposed to be 1 minute, but he already climbed up halfway already, 30 seconds. So he has got an advantage of the 30 seconds. So that is a problem we have to fix with the detections. So there is a close relationship between the detections and the delay. The detection should be as early as possible, right? If not, then the intruder or the adversary will have gained advantage. So what is the last point there? That's this interesting. The last pointer on the slide here says if delay happens before detections, okay, so the person was trying to enter, right, but he was actually delayed for whatever reason. Let's say for the security officers happened to be patrolling there, right? So we consider that as a deterrence. Okay, as long as the detection it is happening before the detections, we call that the deterrence. Okay, so if we start to climb and start to enter, we will call that a delay. Okay, so that is why the deterrence happens first, then followed by detections and followed by the delay. So this is one way we try to differentiate between deterrence and delay. So moving on. So now we know the person is coming here. Remember, I earlier on talked about detections. When you have detections, you must trigger your response. The guard force to be dispatched. Most of the time, we'll be using guard force to respond. Okay? So the idea is to approach the adversary, and there are a few strategies. Now, by the way, most of the concepts here are all drawn from the protection of assets. So if you are preparing for your CPP exam, now all these contents, this knowledge will actually help you to prepare for the CPP exam. So these three response strategies are taken from the POA. It's recommended, of course, based on the kind of adversary action that they are achieving, the objective. So in the case of theft, somebody trying to take something out, right, trying to steal the assets. The idea is containment. Containment means that this person enter, trying to take something out, right? We want to prevent him from taking the things out. Let's say he's trying to take out some intellectual property, right? Let's say informations about upcoming projects, a new phone, okay, a prototype. Now, if this person is to take out, right, the competitor could properly be able to copy the concepts and maybe compete with them. So the idea is to prevent the person from stealing the thing, leaving it. So that is the containment. On the other hand, let's say there's a sabotage. Somebody is trying to come in to do some spray painting or trying to cut a wire or destroy something. The idea is to prevent them, denial, okay, to prevent them from going near the assets. He could have bypassed the first layer, second layer, but the response force must do its best to prevent him from reaching the assets there to sabotage it. So it's denial. Then there's also this assault. So if there's a mentally unstable person, this is just an example, then he's going around creating havoc. So potentially one of the ways is to assault. You have to take action against the person, take some force to bring the person down. So these are some of the response strategies. So when you plan your SOPs, when you prepare your company of procedures, you may then have to take this into consideration because you have to look at the kind of threats, right? Remember, for all the plans that we put in place, you must start off with the risk assessment. So your risk assessment should have already identified the kind of threats. So when we plan the response, you will know how to treat it accordingly. So response in terms of effectiveness is based on the time of receipt of adversary action to interruptions. So from the point that we detect the person is coming to the point that we are able to interrupt him, that is the measurement of effectiveness. Okay, so another important point is deployment to correct locations. Now, for those of you who have been involved in some of these ground operations, you will have probably experienced this before. When the alarm is triggered, right, because let's say your property is quite big, there are many point of entry. So once you detect it, you will see, let's say at night, every point could look the same because all the fencing are the same. You will have your lightings, right? Every part will be the same. So when you deploy your officer, please go to the rear gate there, near the rear gate, which lamppost. You know, how do you dispatch your officer with response force to the exact location there? Sometimes it may be a challenge. Like your officer will reach the point. So exactly where? Which lamppost? Where? Can you see me or not? Can you see me in the camera? Am I at the right place or not? Now, by just going to the correct location would have just taken time. Right? So we'll have to come up with some very good strategies to make sure that you are able to pinpoint the location and accurately inform your officers where is the locations. So you could probably put some lamppost indication like lamppost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is very prominent, no? So from the camera, you can see, intrusion is near camera. Okay, lamppost 12. Officer, please proceed to camera 12. That will increase the response time. So as a formula, the delay time needs to be longer than the response time. Okay, so meaning with all your layers there, okay, let's say add up together, let's say it takes 20 minutes. Okay, the delay time is 20 minutes to reach the assets. Your response time, your officers should respond time within 20 minutes. Anything after the 20 minutes, then the adversary could have taken, could have steal the assets already or could have damaged the assets already. Okay, so this is the formula. Delay time needs to be longer than the response time. Okay, let's look at this table. Now, in the market or in the internet, you could have easily find a lot of this DDDR thing. So I compiled just a few concepts here for reference. In POA, in the physical security manual, it uses deter, detect, delay, and response. So the 3D1R. Now, if you are preparing for the physical security professional exam, right? We got CPP exam for CPP and PSP exam, right? So if you are going for your PSP exam, you have to study this book called Physical Security Principles, also by ASIS. So in the book, it talks about deter, detect, delay, and deny. Okay, so it's a 4D concept. But of course, the idea is almost the same. So if you compare these two, the response and deny is almost similar concept there. It's talking about the same thing there. But the last column here, you see there's this guideline. Okay, you can Google it. For our friends in Singapore, I think you will be familiar. This guideline for enhancing building security in Singapore is published by our authorities here. It's called the Ministry of Home Affairs together with our police force here. This guideline serves to help our local companies here to plan the security measures. And most of our security consultants in Singapore actually use these guidelines when planning, designing the security measures for the buildings here. Now, in this guideline, okay, you can Google online, just Google it for our friends from California or other parts of the world. Just download it. I think it's quite a good, decent guideline to use. It says deter, detect, delay, deny, and response. So actually, it combines the earlier two. Okay, so it further differentiate between deny and response. Okay, so this is just to give you some comparison. But the idea is almost there. Right? Whether you call it the 3D1R or 4D or 4D1R. And there are other texts, literature, which even go into even more Ds. No? They even use more Ds. Okay. So question is, what is the difference between deny and delay and deny? Delay and deny. Sometimes when I talk to some of my students, they get confused. Hey, delay and deny same what? So what is the difference between the delay and deny? Okay. Basically, delay is really about, earlier on as I showed, it is about slowing down the adversary. This is really talking about the determined adversary. Very good. Okay, thank you, George, for deny to keep up, delay is to slow down. Fantastic. That's really sums up what I want to say nicely. So it is really to slow down the determined intruder, the determined adversary, someone who already decided, yes, I'm coming in, okay, I'm going to, so the idea is to slow him down, get the keyword. Okay, but he may eventually be able to enter. That's the idea. But you see, deny is totally about keep out, make sure he's out of the assets. And that is the ultimate objective when we do this 4D1R. The ultimate objective is we need to deny the adversary from accessing to our assets. So there's a key difference here. Okay, so ultimate is the denial, but we need the delay. Okay, which what we're going to talk about later on, the defense in depth. We have these delay layers there to stop them, okay, to slow them down. Okay. Okay, so I'm mindful of time now. Now it's already 10:45, so we have got about 15 minutes. I've been spending quite a lot of time talking about the earlier things. The reason there are really a lot of things to share. So in the next 15 minutes, I will be speeding out a bit. Not I will overrun. So I don't want to hold you all too long. So let me speed up a bit. The key security concepts I want to cover includes protection in depth, minimum consequence of component failure, and balance protections. These are the three main characteristics of a PPS. So what is protection in depth? Protection in depth, there are many similar kind of terms that people use. Some call it protection, defense in depth, security in depth. Some say it's layered security, rings of security. Any other name that you heard of, please feel free to key in inside the chat. I would also like to hear it. Any other terms that you have heard of? Okay. Many people use it interchangeably. Okay, the concept there. Now, the idea is the penetrator need to defeat many protective devices in order to reach the assets. So it's not just one layer. It's not just climbing the fence, then you can reach the assets. It involves like climbing over a fence. Then after that, there's another building there, another door there. After that, you enter already, you have to then take the lift. You must have authorized access to the lift. After you go up, you must have another door there, you know, so you must break through the door. So there's many layers, okay? And it should be overlapping and complementary. So it is not a standalone. You finish this, then you got another layer. It can be overlapping. That's a concept of effective protection in depth. So what it means for the attacker, adversaries is it increase the uncertainty about the system. So for adversaries standing outside doing surveillance, you see, wow, there's a perimeter, then there's a building. You can see the building, there's also a door. So what else is inside? You know, so he will have uncertainty about the place. So it also means he need to do more work, more preparation, more surveillance work. He may get more rehearsal required. See, this will then achieve a deterrence effect. So by having a protection in depth, actually it is also in a way to do that deterrence. Okay, and of course, hopefully, by having this, the adversary will say, okay, let's not try this building. Let's try another place. Or if they so decided to even to come in, after they try layer 1, layer 2, oh no, how come so many layers? Then they say, let's give up, let's withdraw. Okay, so this is a extract, a quote. I took it from this book called Implementing Physical Protection System. Now, this is a book you have to read also if you're preparing for the Physical Security Professional Exam, PSP. So in this book, David says, given that controls are imperfect, strong security applies the principles of defense in depth. Okay, so security can never be perfect. You can never have a wall, a perimeter wall or fence that can totally keep up the adversary. It is almost impossible. Okay, there's many ways to overcome it. Okay, you can climb the fence, you can cut through the fence, and even let me share with you one incident, my own personal experience. I was managing this property. It has got a 3.5 meter high fence. Okay, 3.5 meter. And for your information, in the context of in Singapore, 3.5 meter high fence is considered very good. It's very high fence. Now, guess what? Okay, there was this intruder that came in without touching the fence. Can you guess how did the person come in? Without touching the fence, he came from outside, he entered into the interior easily. Okay, so this is a real incident. Okay, so what happened was this person actually was doing some work outside. He was pruning the tree branches. Okay, so he has a legitimate work outside of the building that I was in charge of protecting. So he was doing the tree pruning. He was cutting the leaves, the branches, and it happens that the branches fell into our property. It was on a weekend, so nobody was inside the property. So very smart, this guy. Oh, he's supposed to do his job, right? The tree branches drop inside, right? He need to pick it out, right? There's nobody in the building. Nobody he can call to open the door to let him go in. So what did he do? Now they are using the high reach, right? You want to do the tree pruning, you have to do the high reach, right? You reach up to a height, right? He used the high reach, he turned it inwards to the building and he lowered it himself into the property. Okay, and he literally walked in the property, he picked up the branches, he went back onto the vehicle, the high reach, and he lifted himself out. Right, it can happen, even a 3.5 meter fence. Right, so it's still, we think we got a very good fence, but they still can overcome. Okay, so this is just one example of real life experience I have. So layer security in physical security approach requires criminal to penetrate or overcome a series of security layers before reaching the target. Okay, so the layers could be barriers, building, CCTV, guards. Okay, so this is based on ASIS security glossary. So this is just a definition of layered security. I now like to share with you this model, security in-depth model. Some of you may know it. Okay, so when we talk about defense in-depth, the layered security, we have an outer layer, which is the perimeter. We got middle layer, which can be called the building perimeter, and then a inner layer, example like a strong room, and the asset sits inside there. Okay, so you create these multiple layers, so you make it difficult for people to enter. Now, so how do you apply the 4D, the 4D 1R or the 3D 1R? Now, at every of these layer, you apply the 4D. So, for example, at the perimeter fence there, you should have a deterrence. Put up a fencing, deter people from coming in. Okay, then you must have a detection there. You need to put in a fence intrusion detection system there, right? So how do you delay? Probably on the fence on top of it, you put in a top guard. Okay, so put in some barbed wire, you delay it. Now, how about the 4D, the deny? The deny could be you link a procedure where upon detection, the response force, the security officers can proceed to this fence line there. Okay, so for the perimeter, you need to have this 4D. As you're moving into the building perimeter there, you apply the same concept. So when you look at the building perimeter, how do you design the security there? You need to have a deterrence. So, example, there should be a building wall there. Your point entry, there should be a door there, access control door there. Now, at your access control door at the building there, you need to have a detection, right? When the door open, close, there should be an intrusion alarm also. Okay, so this is just basically a very basic concept to give you an idea that when you plan, you have this layer security, then you apply 4D concept to each of this layer. Next, I move on to another concept called the minimum consequence of component failure. Now, every component, you will definitely experience failure, right? No system is perfect. Any electronic component will fail. So we should start with expecting that it will fail. So therefore, you must start with establishing a contingency for all the systems. And the most preferred contingency, of course, is auto redundancy. So example, if you have got an access control system that is that's a backend server or database, have a failover server, so auto redundant. Okay? Because we are expecting it to fail, we must have contingency in place. And we need to avoid single point of failure. Another important concept is called the balance protections. Now, with balance protections, we talk about minimum time to penetrate each barrier. It should be equal. So let's look at again a perimeter. You got the fence line, you got the main gate, right? Let's say this place is not guarded at night. Now, the time taken to climb the main gate should be the same as the time taken to climb the fence. A lot of properties I've observed, they normally will have got this good fence there, got the barbed wire. But when it comes to the gate there, the swing gate there, I observe many organizations fail to put in emphasis on the gate. They have a gate there with a lot of barbed wire, which you can actually easily use this as the aid to climb up. And when you reach the top of the gate, the best part is there's no top guard, which makes it an easy access point. So for any intruders who want to enter this property, they will just go to the main gate there. Okay, so that is one example of unbalanced protections. Okay, so balanced protection, we can also look at other areas. Example, you should use different systems, should not over depend on one systems. Okay, and objectives should also be balanced. It cannot be overemphasized on security. There's no safety, right? So should the doors always be feel safe or feel secure, right? So these are the questions. But of course, having said this, complete balance is not possible. Okay, so Xiong earlier also mentioned wire drain. Okay, thank you for the earlier comments. Wire drain. Okay, so the last thing that I want to cover with the remaining few minutes, actually there's 8 categories of physical security measures you can find inside this guideline. Again, you can download this from ASIS website if you are ASIS members, and I do encourage you to join as an ASIS member, especially if you want to take CPP exam, because you can download many guidelines and standards like this. So as a reference, you can use these guidelines. And just now I also shared with you the earlier guidelines, right, by Singapore. Now, if you have any other good guidelines or standards you think is useful, please feel free to share inside this chat group so I can also learn and the rest of our friends here can also learn about it. Right? Please to type it inside the chat group. So let me just quickly share with you this guideline. You can use this as a reference if you're planning your security protection plan for your organizations. There are 8 categories here. SEPTED, barriers, access control, lightings, intrusion detections, video surveillance, security, and procedures. Okay, so SEPTED, as I mentioned earlier on, is used as a deterrence. Okay, basically we talk about using the built environment to enhance the security. The idea is to reduce the incidents and fear of crime. It was first, this is not new, it has been around since 1972, used as a defensible space, the concept by Newman Oscar. Okay, these are some of the strategies. Again, there are many texts that talk about SEPTED. In fact, for information, there is also going to be a ISO, all right, on this SEPTED. Some of you may be aware. Okay, so an ISO standard is going to be developed on this SEPTED. Here, I will not go into all these details due to the limitation of the time, but these are some of the strategies. Okay, next is the barriers. Barriers has also been talking a lot in just now the last 40 minutes. It can be natural or man-made. Okay, you establish a clear zone, and most importantly, it serves as territorial boundaries. Access control barriers. These are like your crash barrier, your door. These are also very important. So the idea is it allows the authorized person to enter, but it keeps people out. So other components of access control will then include like locks and keys, vehicle access control. Okay, so there are various means to defeat access control. Again, these 3 means is from the POA text. So you learn this, then you will be able to answer some of the exam questions. So deceit, okay, that means currently most often modern days now we say social engineering. Okay, the deceit, how do you con the staff or con the security officers to let you to enter the place, to give you the password, to give you the keys. Okay, deceit. Direct physical attack means maybe you use a crowbar to break open the door or you cut the fence. Technical attack is more like you probably hack the systems. So you need to have some technical knowledge to do that. Lightings is another important aspect. Without lightings, then the place you cannot do the video surveillance, because many cameras will rely heavily on lightings in order to capture the footage. So of course, lighting can be a deterrence and can improve surveillance, reduce liability. The disadvantage, of course, is some installation maintenance costs. There are also light pollutions. So I've experienced before in my past, neighbors of my property complain, hey, your floodlight is shining into my house. So there are these kind of complaints, and we have to adjust the lighting angle or to dim down the lights, the lux level. Right? There could also be aesthetic issues. Intrusion detections. Okay, again, the 4D or 3Ds. Detections is important here, and there are many different types of detections. Okay, so these are just a list of it. I will not be able to go into details, but the key thing is detection should not be standalone. It should work with access control and video surveillance. Example is in your control room. Let's say one of your doors detected an intrusion, unauthorized entry. Your system should automatically pop up the CCTV footage. Okay, so this is one example. Video surveillance, typically we call it also CCTV monitoring. There's many types, okay, many ways you can do it. Commonly, we have this active and passive monitoring. And how do we select the system? We look at system approach or component approach. System approach means as a whole, how does your video surveillance work with like other systems like access control? You look at this as a system approach. Component approach means you want to have an IP camera, you just want to have an analog camera, you look at it as a standalone. Okay, so the recommended approach, of course, is system approach. Okay, camera types, there are many different. Okay, so these are the list of the different types of cameras. Okay, there's also the power, the transport medium. Okay, there's actually a lot of things to cover, okay, when you prepare for your CPP exam. Personnel, proprietary, contract, or hybrid. Okay, so when we talk about security managers, These are some of the recommended standards you can refer to. In fact, this is also can be accessible if access ASIS member, CSO standard. So managers, sometimes we call CSO, security director, security manager. So there are many different titles we can use. In terms of security officers, there's also a guideline by ASIS. Wow, so you can see there's so much information accessible from ASIS store. So again, I encourage you to join as a member, especially if you want to prepare for your CPP exam. So security officers in this guideline, it covers like the responsibilities. So these are just examples. Okay, so these are just for some reference. If you want to learn, this is outside of the CPP coverage. Something I share more on contextualization to Singapore. Okay, so Singapore is heavily regulated. These are the links to some of the regulations in Singapore. This is a progressive wage model. For information for our friends not from Singapore, it's heavily regulated, and the roles, the duties are all stipulated. For each of the ranks, security officers to supervisor, what they can do is regulated, is covered inside this progressive wage model. Procedures. So procedures here, we talk about the policies also. Okay, so normally as a guide, policies is high level document and is less often that is amended, but procedures is updated regularly. It is more operational, it's more on the ground. It guides the day-to-day operations. Okay, so this is just an overview. I just want to share this table as an overview. Now look at the DDDR and each of these measures. So example, you look at the first one, barrier. Barrier can serve as a deterrence and delay. So when you are planning your security measures, you say you want to apply barrier, okay, then you know that you have covered deterrence and delay. So you look at number 6, personnel. Personnel can be used for all forms of this deterrence, detection, delay, and response. Okay. So this is just a summary of what you can, how you can apply these measures. All right. So now it's 11:04, slightly overrun. So I have covered all the contents for this tutorial. At this point now, if you have other questions, please feel free to type in the chat. Okay, or not, you want to raise your hand and you want to ask questions, you can unmute yourself. Is there any questions? Anyone? Now, to view more about some of my sharing, you can go to this Security 4.0 e-learning channel, which is on YouTube. You just type Security 4.0 e-learning channel. I've actually produced several other contents on like CPP, on security management. Then you can view it. I have shared some of these online. Thank you for spending your Saturday morning or a Friday evening with me. So I hope to see you all again probably at the next tutorial or at the CPP review program. All right, so I'm signing off. Okay, have a great day. See you.